Welcome to Alpha Anywhere Orientation. We're going to take a tour of the Alpha Anywhere Developer Edition. That's the software you'll use to build your mobile, web, or desktop applications. We'll begin our tour with the Web Projects Control Panel, which is at the heart of the Alpha Anywhere Developer Interface. And we'll take a look at the pages and components, which are the building blocks of any Alpha Anywhere application. In particular, we'll look at Alpha 5's UX component, a component you can use to build just about anything. And we'll see some of the controls available to you in the UX component that you can use in your own applications. Now, all of this is high level, and it will go at a rather fast pace, so I do not suggest trying to follow along. Instead, just watch the video and become acquainted with Alpha Anywhere, so you'll be ready for the next set of videos, which will be step-by-step hands-on tutorials. We begin here at the Web Projects Control Panel. It keeps the files in your project organized. This includes HTML pages, JavaScript files, cascading style sheets, A5W pages, and web components. The Web Projects Control Panel is divided into a few sections. There's a series of buttons here on the top, and there's the content pane here below that lists all the files in your project. To the left, we have this selection box. This is used to limit what you see in the content pane. For example, if you just wanted to see images, you could click Images. This is handy if you have a lot of files, but for smaller projects, it may just be easier to click All Files to see everything at once. Now let's take a look at some of the buttons at the top. There's the New button, which allows you to create a new file, such as an HTML file. There's also an Edit button, which edits the currently selected file. There's the Add button, which allows you to add a file that already exists into your project. In this case, we'll add a photo to the project. And over here is the Delete button, which deletes the currently selected file. Now, the Web Projects Control Panel only deals with individual files. If you want to add or delete multiple files at once, just click this Folder button over here, and Alpha Anywhere will open Windows Explorer, where you can add and delete to your heart's content. And any changes you make in Windows Explorer are reflected in the Web Projects Control Panel when you return. Now let's go take a look at the different kinds of files that make up an Alpha Anywhere application. I'm sure you've heard of HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, but you're probably wondering, what are A5W pages and web components? Well, an A5W page is really an HTML page that can also contain server-side XBasic code. If you're familiar with PHP or ASP pages, the concept is the same, in that PHP pages can contain PHP code and ASP pages can contain ASP code. Now, A5W pages can also contain something else, web components. Think of web components as the building blocks of your application. There are different kinds of web components that do different things. For example, if you want to put a form on a page where a user can enter data, you might use a grid component or maybe a UX component. If you wanted to add a video, you would use the video player component. The image gallery component lets you display a collection of images, which users can navigate through and click on. And there's the calendar component, which is useful in building scheduling applications. Now let's focus our attention on one particular kind of component called the UX component. The UX component is the fundamental building block of mobile applications, but it's also one of the best ways to build web and desktop applications as well. It's an extremely versatile component. So let's take a look at the UX component builder so you can get a feel for what it does. Here on the left, there's a list of options starting with controls, properties, and data binding. Let's actually look at them in reverse order, starting with data binding. When you choose data binding here on the left, this is where you let Alpha 5 know which data sources you're interested in using with this component. You're also given the option of setting up a new SQL database. Moving up, we'll click on Properties here on the left, and again we're given choices over here on the right. Here you can set properties such as how you would like dates to be displayed, what style sheet you'd like to use with the component, how error messages should appear, and quite a bit more. Now moving up again, we'll click on Controls here on the left, and now we find a blank area over here on the right. This area is where you'll do the actual building of the UX component, and you'll do that by adding and configuring controls. You'll find these controls in two lists. The first is labeled Data Controls, and the next is labeled Other Controls. Data controls are typically connected to a back-end SQL database or a web service, and they can include controls you might expect. For example, a text box control lets you display and collect text. You might use two of them to collect a person's first and last name. The text area is like a text box, but it can span multiple lines. There are also drop-down boxes, radio controls, checkboxes, and images. In addition to these basic HTML controls, there are also some controls that are unique to Alpha Anywhere, like this slider control, the switch, and the spin list. And there are more advanced controls, like the calendar control, the tree control, and the map control. You can also create your own custom controls as well. Now, the UX control has got a lot of functionality and flexibility, way more than what we can cover in this video. But before we move on, there's one more concept I'd like to introduce you to: panels. The idea behind panels is to create a flexible way to group controls together and allow the user to navigate from one group of controls to the next. This is what it looks like. The controls for this application are contained in panel cards, and the user can move from card to card by means of a panel navigator. Well, that wraps it up for this brief Alpha Anywhere orientation, so let's go over what we learned. To begin, we saw the Web Projects control panel, which organizes all of the files in our project, including A5W pages and web components. Web components are the building blocks of Alpha Anywhere applications. There are different kinds of web components, but one that's extensively used is the UX component. The UX component allows you to create interfaces by inserting controls, which can be bound to data sources. These include common HTML controls like text boxes and radio buttons, but there are other more powerful controls like the map control and scheduling control. The controls in an application can be grouped into panel cards, and users can navigate between panel cards by means of a panel navigator. Now that this video has come to an end, we suggest you download Alpha Anywhere and start using the hands-on, step-by-step tutorials. Thank you for watching.